Hey, good morning, everybody. Bob Phelan here. I posted a picture out there of the basement handrails that I built and got a request from a fellow member asking how I went about doing it and specifically how I installed the spindles. So I thought I'd put together a little quick video using SketchUp showing my approach to how I went about doing this. I'm not a master carpenter. I've never done this before. I knew what my end result I wanted to look like, and I just figured out a way to get to that. And this is it. This line here represents my current handrail that I had in place. I knew that I wanted to follow that when the handrail I put in place extended, that it would follow that same line and be the same height from the steps as this current handrail. So that was one of the criteria that I kept in mind when I started on this project. If we flip around to the front side and we take a little closer look at the area down here, one of the things that I felt was very critical actually was this angle. I needed to know what this angle was, and I needed to be fairly accurate because that angle is going to be used a lot, cutting the ends of the base plate, cutting the end of the handrails, cutting the bottom of the spindles. So that was something that needed to be determined and be fairly accurate. So once I had that determined, I cut my base plate and flushed it up against the wall, flushed it up against the end over here, and put some glue down, construction glue, and then tacked it in place. So at that point I had my base plate done and installed. I then went on to the post, and what I did with the post was you needed to determine the height of the post, because once you put your handrail in, you want it to be parallel to the bottom and you want it to hit the center of the post. And the approach that I took was on my current handrail. I took a piece of, I think I had a piece of copper tubing, if I'm not mistaken, and I taped it onto the handrail and let it extend out, and then held the post up next to it so that I could figure out where the center would be, determine how much I needed to cut off, and then cut it off. And that's how I got the height of my post. There's probably different ways you could do actually measuring and stuff like that, but to me, being a visual person, I felt that it was easier just to do it that way and determine the height of the post. So now I got the post in place, and I went ahead and temporarily used some wood screws and screwed it in here. So I got the base plate and my post in place, and now it was onto the handrail. Again, the handrail, once I determined what the length needed to be, using that angle again that I came up with, I cut the end of the handrails and fitted in there and made sure that it was parallel to the base. And again, I just used some wood screws temporarily to screw it into the wall and into the post to hold it in place. So at this point, pretty much the handrail, the post, and the base plate is done. And I went on to the spindle. Now the spindles, what I know I wanted to do was I wanted to go 1 inch up inside the handrail and 3/4 of an inch down into this plate, because it was a 3/4 inch plate. So what I did was, on the spindles, I believe they came with a 1/4 inch hole in them already. I wanted something more substantial than a 1/4 inch. So while the space was square, I drilled out a 1/2 inch hole so I could put a 1/2 inch dowel in it. Once I drilled the hole out to the proper depth, I cut it on an angle, that it needed to be, and then I went and put in a dowel, glued it in there, so that it would stick down here no more than 3/4 of an inch. Actually, I might have went a little bit shy of 3/4 of an inch, because that's the thickness of the base plate. So that I did that to all the spindles. So once the spindles were done, and I knew the length of them and had them cut to length, I had to now determine how many spindles did I need. Measuring this distance between the post and the wall, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it's a 4 inch center to center is the maximum that you should have, just so you don't enable children getting their head stuck in here. So with that in mind, I marked the underside of my handrail where the spindles needed to be, and took it over to my drill press, set the angle on the table of my drill press to this angle again and drilled a series of 1-inch deep holes in the handrail for the spindles. What I then did, and again, I probably could have just found the center line of this base plate and measure every 4 inches and do it that way. But what I ended up doing was taking one of the tops of the spindle that I cut off, drilled a hole through the center, ran a string up through it with my plumb bob, and then shoved it up inside the hole and let the plumb bob come down and determine, where the bottom, the base plate hole should be. So once I did that and I marked each one, where they needed to be, I then just took a drill and just drilled a 1/2 inch hole down into it. I wasn't overly concerned with being at the proper angle because it's going to give a little bit, and once the spindle is down and the base of the spindle covers that hole, you're not going to see it anyway. So then once I did that and got the holes built, drilled in the base and the holes were in the top or in the handrail, I took the handrail off and one by one put the spindles in, as I lowered the handrail down, and once I got everything in place, then I drilled the holes out a little bit bigger here and then used lag screws to secure it, and and then lagged this back in place, and that was the approach that I used to build my handrails. And again, there may be easier ways, faster ways, better ways, but that was the approach that I used, and it worked for me. So just thought I'd pass this along. Hopefully, Barry, this will give you a little insight as to how to go about doing it, and I'm sure you'll get some feedback from other members as to different approaches or different ways of doing it. But again, this was my way. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I look forward to seeing what your comments are on this. Take care.